Justin, I value your instinct is to jam out to the music.
Forgot that I turned the camera on. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I love it. Next time I would totally value if we jammed out while we were waiting those 5 minutes. Felicia, I'm looking at you
Hello.
being on this too.
Hello, hello.
Bonjour, everyone. Welcome. Welcome back to our second installment of New Year, New View. I welcome those back who have been here before, and I welcome those that are new to joining our community. For the sake of those that are new, I'll just offer a very quick introduction as to what this is today, what we're talking about, as well as a quick introduction to my lovely co-hosts, Justin and Felicia. Before we get started on things, while I'm going through this, I really do encourage that just as we were waiting those 5 minutes, we did pop up a survey, and we'd love if you could fill that out, because the goal of what we're doing here today is to serve you. And so we really do want to catch a pulse on what you're interested in and what's important to you. All right, so the session that you joined in is one of several different sessions. We are doing New Year, New View. And this is the DNA company's response and offering towards, the ever faded New Year's goals. We kicked this off around January 21, and we know that January 21 is infamous for a day where everyone gives up on their New Year's goal, and they're like, "Ooh, guess that's not happening anymore." And so our response to that is truly this. If you had this idea at the turn of the year of, hey, I want to create this new habit, I want to lose weight, I want to go to the gym, I want to, do this healthy thing. How do we sincerely shift your behavior? How do we sincerely get you to a point where not only you're doing those things, achieving that goal, but it feels natural. It feels like something that, as natural as per se waking up and getting out of bed. Right. So we're leveraging not only tactics today, we're talking about habits and behaviors today, how you can leverage discipline and how you can leverage what you do in your day to day to support your goal. But separate to that, we are going to be leaning into genetic analysis, right? Part of the reason this concept of just eat less and exercise doesn't work is that no two bodies are built the same, right? As people that, we look at your DNA, we say, hey, look at your DNA. This is the way you can best be living to support your health. We know that knowing your DNA will change how you go about navigating health goals. So if you haven't already and you're interested in, future sessions, namely starting mid-March or so, we're going to be tapping a lot more into the very specific things that our DNA, our genetics can teach us. We've designed these check-ins to kind of have those more specific genes called out later on, so that if you don't know your gene results and you're interested in knowing them, you have that timeline in order to submit your sample and get those results, so that when we're going through that information in subsequent sessions, you're able to look at your report and be like, oh, that's my presentation. This is how my body responds. And here are some very specific strategies that are aligned to those genes. So no longer you kind of guessing in the dark, hoping that you throw spaghetti at the wall, it'll stick. There's a little bit something more specific. Okay. But up until then, so this week and in approximately 2 weeks at that beginning of March, we're going to be doing sessions that are a bit more general, because we want to ensure if you want to have your DNA done, you want to know the genes that we're talking about, you have time to collect that. Okay. So before I open up the floor, we last left you with our first session last week. We left you with the question and the comment, we really talked about a mind shift. We talked about this idea that while you may not be within a body or a health state that is your goal, right? It's possible. We really talked about that curiosity around the change, and we spoke a little bit about motivation, right? And we talked in particular about what's going to get you motivated. Science time and time and tells us again, it's not necessarily going to be a specific physique for most people. For a lot of people, it's going to be tied to a feeling. So last day, we really, really encouraged you to think of, what is the reason? What is that feeling? I'm going to open up the floor in just a few minutes to allow people to toss in what they think that is, right? But before that, I'm going to quickly go over what this community, what their goals are. And I do say community. remember that, and we'll make sure this is, we're giving you a link. This is a community. This is a community effort. You will consistently see my face, Justin's face, Felicia's face. And we also have a Facebook group so that should you so choose, you can really engage in community and leverage the support, the love, and the camaraderie, as well as the accountability and the discipline. We're getting there today, to getting to your goals, right? And that will also be a hub where you will see the schedule. So, you know, it's approximately every other week, but on that community, there's listed when we have those. There's also opportunity to say, hey, this is my goal, sharing it with the community and seeking out like-minded people. So when I look at the web results here, right? Thank you everyone for replying. We're seeing about, oh goodness, more than 60 results. So thank you for those that are replying. We're seeing approximately 20% of you guys are seeking some weight loss. I get it. 25% are very similar to me. My goal over the course of this, because we each have a goal as well. Mine is to build up some fitness. I'm gonna find and pretend I can get muscle. The next one here is a little bit more of a general category, and I'm so curious when we open up the questions. I'd love if you guys could be a bit more specific. We're hearing build healthy habits. I love that. I'm curious what those healthy habits are. And then we have a happy little 6% that said other. So again, I really encourage people in the other category to just jump into the comment section and let us know what their other is. I'm curious about you 6%. So as people are typing in, as people are sharing, right, either what is their motivation, or, you know, if there's someone who's trying to build healthy habits, what those are, you know, please do. We want to make sure we're specific today. We want to make sure that we're supporting those things that you care about. I want to introduce our other panelists. So I'm going to start off with Justin, and then Justin, when you've introduced yourself, if you want to toss the mic as well to Felicia.
Absolutely. Hello, hello. It's Justin here. I love this topic. I love this topic with all my heart. It's my favorite thing because, first of all, you have to be better for your life to be better, right? And I like that when we talk about habits, we talk about behavior change, it's putting the onus on us, you know, and it takes a lot of courage to not embody that victim mindset, right? And actually take responsibility for our lives. I really like that because, like I said in our last one, we are in the driver's seat, right? So daily, I wake up and I just pursue a high level of character. You know, I pursue purpose over pleasure, and we have strong habits. I really just try to stay in alignment, right? We talk about alignment with your assignment. If you are in alignment with your energy, thoughts, and actions to the actual end result that you want, you're going to get there eventually. So that's on you. And that's what's beautiful about it, right? We can choose our mindset surrounding whatever the actual circumstance is. That's the only true inalienable right that we have, is to choose our mindset. So I love mindset. I love talking about habits and behavior change, lifestyle, the style of our life, right? So that's what we're going to be going over today, and I am looking forward to that one. Felicia, it's all you. I suspect you share some of my viewpoints on that.
I do, Justin. Thank you for having me. Yes, this is going to be a fun topic. I love this topic. Setting goals and just becoming a better version of each individual self. For me, it's how can I be a better me so then I am in turn a better partner, grandmother, mother, friend, sister. It goes all the above. And so I set goals for myself, and it's achieving those goals, which I know we all have things that keep us like we can't get there, but we're here to strategize today and help you figure it out. That we all can come and achieve our goal, whatever it looks like, big, small. Our journeys are all different, and it all leads to a different path. But at the very end of the day, we just want to be better, right? We want to create a lifestyle that is engaging and freeing and makes us a better person. So I'm here, and let's have some fun and talk about it and ask away. We're here.
Yeah, I love it. Now, just a quick mic check. I saw Andrew put in the comments a little bit of struggling around hearing. So hopefully I switched up my mic. Maybe tech isn't my strong suit, but let us know if you guys are having issues hearing us. So wonderful. I'm looking into the chat. You know, I'm seeing a few people that have put in that especially clarified what healthy habits are or what the other is, and that really sitting around energy, right? You know, kind of, I'm imagining that's probably, you know, I get through my day, it's okay enough, but I'd love to actually feel zeal and energy and a little bit of spunk, if you will, within the day. Yeah, so I think that's a really fun one to build habits around, in particular, because I think just like with a fitness goal, or just like with I want to, you know, become, or a weight loss goal, right? It touches on many different points of health, in particular, many different points of in the genome, right? There's not one exercise gene, there's not one diet gene, they all come together. And so I think those will be fun ones. So I'd love to start off and opening in particular to Justin, because at the DNA company, Justin is our little ninja magic guru when it comes to behavior change. I in particular look to him when I'm thinking about trying to set an exercise goal. I look to Justin. So as well, I will be looking to Felicia for those tips as to how to actually do it. So Justin, what are your thoughts when someone comes to you and they say, hey, I'm looking to lose weight. I'm looking to increase energy. I know I have to change my behaviors. Where do I start? Because everyone's telling me to do Dr. Google tells me absolutely everything. I don't know what to do with the advice from Dr. Google.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with Dr. Google is that you end up with like an option paralysis. You know what I mean? Like that paralysis by analysis, because there is in fact so much on there that it's very overwhelming. You know, and I have clients all the time coming to me and saying, I don't know, I feel off today, right? Like we'll start the call and I'm like, what's up? How's it going? That's how I started. And they're just like, feeling a little off today. And I just look at them and I go, what did you do to be on? Great question, right? How many people on this call right now? I feel off today. How many of you went to work and said that to one of your coworkers? What did you do to be on? Right? I think that our default setting a lot of times is in that kind of off category, right? Maybe we have a default negative mindset. Maybe we're choosing pleasure over purpose too much, and we're down on ourselves about that. So once you lose momentum, that shifts and that becomes your new default setting, right? You may have any scenario going on in your life. It could be health related or whatever. Maybe you're just choosing that negative mindset and you're telling yourself a bad story about that. That's an energy leak, right? That makes you drained. If I just wake up, let's say I had two clients that have the exact same genetics for whatever reason, they wouldn't, but, and the same problem. One of them has a negative mindset and a negative narrative. One of them has a positive mindset and a positive narrative. I can promise you, I can predict which one of those is going to have, you know, a better outcome. You know, you show me someone's habits, I'll read you their future. This is not, I don't need a magic 8 ball for that, right? So I say, what did you do to be on? Did you miss your wake up time? You took an L. Did you not get your morning hydration? Did you not, you know, connect with the universe? Do you not have some kind of gratitude practice? So you're stacking up L's all day. And then by the time it's our meeting, you're saying you feel off. Yeah. What did you do to be on? That's my first question. As we dissect the mindset more and more, you know, I come to realize that these people are telling themselves bad stories a lot of the time. I dive into the science, of course, but I'm really fascinated with this chosen mindset thing. I'll probably talk about it a couple times today because you can talk yourself into life. You can talk yourself out of life. You can talk yourself into the gym. You can talk yourself out of the gym. At what point does this become a non-negotiable process, right? How much stress can you take until you just talk yourself out of it? I'm off today. I'm going to go have the snacks because it's been one of those days, right? So we're now compounding the problem as opposed to winning in your losing season, like I talked about in our last webinar. You have to win. You have to always try to win. There's always a best move on the chessboard, right? Sometimes you look at the chessboard and you're just screwed. There's nothing you can do. But there's always a best choice. There's always a worst choice. We have to get to a point where we don't feel sorry for ourselves and we make the best choice regardless. It's like what Felicia said. She's trying to be her best self for everybody else. It's actually selfless to show up and do your best, right? So that's where the why comes in. It's my why that I can be the best stepdad I can, that I can be the best partner I can, the best practitioner I can. My clients deserve Jay Harris 10.0. It's my responsibility to create that man, a man that I admire daily, right? So my energy, thoughts, and actions are in alignment with that man daily. And the second they're not, I've actually done a disservice to everybody else. So that's how I approach it. It's an empowerment process.
So if I heard this, and please correct me if I didn't hear you correctly, number one, there's this idea of a bigger vision of yourself, right? So especially on those days where you wake up and it's the wrong side of the bed, you know, there's kind of a checking in of, cool, maybe it is the wrong side of the bed, but how am I going to achieve this, you know, best version of Justin? And then the more interesting thing, and this is where I'd love both you and Felicia to dive in a little bit more to, is the steps to actually get to that best version. Because I think it's nice to kind of have this like avatar in the sky, this like super Justin. But what are the steps? Like, how do you decide on those steps to get to that super Justin, that super Felicia, you know, that super Batman, whoever, Batman's my favorite comic book character, you know, whoever your superhero is, how do you get to that person?
Yeah,
I
so for me, and I'll pass this to you, Felicia. I just had one point about that. The way I do it is I ask myself, what do I admire? Right? Do I admire someone who's shot out and can't stop drinking, even though he told his wife 20 times, I'm going to stop this time? Babe, this is the year I'm going to stop drinking. This is the year we're going to get out of our financial problems. This is the year. This is the year. And then going back on that over and over again, that's really what it is. You know, so it's this process of creating this individual I admire. What do I admire? I admire a man who's in shape. I admire a man who gets up early. I admire a man who holds his word to his family, right? So authentically ask yourself, each of you, what do I admire truly in my heart? And then be that, do that, right? If you operate out of that higher self, no one can ever make you feel like a loser if all you do is win, right? That's something that I say often. So keep winning, stack wins. What's a win? Making good choices, waking up early, doing the right things for your body, doing the right things at work. Win, 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 win. Now no one can tell you you're a loser, right? Go ahead, Felicia, before I rant a bit.
no. That's a great point. I always ask people when I say, okay, let's look at your day. How did it start? When they will start listing it off. Okay, I got up, I ate, but it's all a certain time. And then I say, how could it be better? Like if you needed like 10 extra minutes, can you get up 10 minutes extra earlier? Or can you not look at social media for 10 minutes longer? It's making small steps to increase what it is you're trying to gain. And then, I think I know it's saying, okay, I'm not going to do that today. Okay, today, say you messed up yesterday, but tomorrow you're like, okay, in the morning, I'm getting up 10 minutes early. And then that 10 minutes leads to 20 minutes. And then you'll see the gradual changes and the way your habits form. And again, it's just like Justin said, it's how do you care about yourself? Are you sick and tired of being sick and tired? I've said that before. It's, I want a better version of me. Well, to get a better version, you got to do something different. To get a different result, you got to do something different. But it can be as easily as one thing a day. So you don't, you get up earlier, or you don't eat that, or you don't drink that, or you walk, you walk 10 minutes longer. It doesn't have to be some big, huge, oh, I'm going to go run a mile today when you can't run a mile. It's almost, small goals.
Yeah. Yeah. I had my friend, a very dear friend, her husband decided that he wanted to get in shape, and he's a computer scientist. So of course he created this Excel sheet where this was going to be quite literally incrementally how he was going to do it. And so he decided that I forget if it was, I think it was probably a kilometer because we're Canadian. He decided he wanted to run a kilometer. So he actually broke it down by the meter. So for the Americans out there, kilometers, they break down into meters. So he quite literally created this spreadsheet and said, day one, I'm going to run this many meters. The next day, he ran that many meters plus 5 or 10. I forget his increments. But the decision, this 1% improvement, was quite literally every day, I'm going to run so many meters than the day before. Right. And please don't hear me. Like, if you're a computer scientist and Excel sheets are your thing, go have fun. But otherwise, like, find what your increment is and find what is natural to you, to not only how you break it down, but actually creating those tractionable steps in your health goal. So for him, again, it was running a kilometer and breaking it down daily by meters, and the satisfaction, again, because he's a glorious little computer scientist, the satisfaction of an Excel that tracked his progress, right? I'm not that detail oriented. That would drive me crazy. But, I'm very mindful of, for example, with fitness goals, I'm very mindful of how much I can lift. And that's something that I'm able, not necessarily to track on Excel, because Lord, I won't do that. But, as the weights come up and as they feel easier, that is to me a metric, right? So it's a decision, incremental, and then the feedback to actually know you're progressing, right? Thoughts? Like how do you guys break your goals down, and then how do you to an extent track them in different ways? Not everyone is kind of, we're going to talk about a 5-HTT LPR gene eventually that we'll talk about how much detail you like. I'm very much not on the detail side of things, so data sheets scare me, but incremental changes in weights do. So how do you guys how do you break your goals down, Felicia, Justin?
Well, first of all, that's what's so beautiful about weightlifting, right? It's like you lifted it or you didn't, right? So it's like the resistance is there, and you can just throw a little 2.5 pound plate per side and hit that the next day. And this all speaks to that momentum game, right? Like Felicia just said 10 minutes earlier. Well, that if you can stick to that, that now becomes your new norm, right? Now my default setting is 5 instead of 5:10. All right, that's 10 more minutes of things I'm going to do, right? That's actions. So yeah, it's this momentum game. It's this building of high quality habits through just little daily steps and becoming. Life isn't so much about acquiring, it's more about being and becoming, right? It's like on one of our prior webinars, I said it's not how, it's who, right? How do I become this person? Well, who? How do I build 10 pounds of muscle? Who is going to actually pull that off, right? Because you have to embody the teaching. If I'm a coach and I was a strength and conditioning coach for a long time, if I couldn't lift the wet towel, I'm not sure how much, advice I would actually have. I went through the ringer. I went from being a weaker person to a stronger person just by stacking wins and getting that momentum. So, he could have started at 1 meter a day. Hey, to start where it starts, right? We may have no momentum whatsoever. Today I'm going to run 1 meter, right? And if you are an American, that's about an exaggerated step. That's one big step, but it's one step, right?
Yep.
Tomorrow it's going to be 2 steps, and we just kind of build and we grow. The law of exposure says that once exposed, you can't be unexposed. Now that I know what it's like to take 2 steps and do 2 meters, I'm not going to go back to doing 0. I want to hit 3 tomorrow, right? And it becomes this addiction, but a positive one, and you start to get more excited. I think the hardest work is right in the beginning. Once the momentum is built up, it actually becomes kind of exciting with all of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I have a thought, but I want to offer the floor to Felicia first. Just let's remember to come back to that. And I'll also encourage, as Felicia's answering, as I offer my thought in a little bit, please everyone jump into the chat and let us know if you've thought about kind of what sort of goal you have, and do you have that idea of what your increment, what that potential 1% a day is? What's your proverbial Excel with the meters broken down, whatever that might be. But Felicia, let us know any thoughts of how you approach this sort of thing.
Oh yeah. First of all, I was going to say getting power is explosive and very, very, I don't know how to even describe it. Like you just feel powerful. I had a woman one time. I have an example. I trained a lady who was in her 80s, and when she came to me, she was on a walker. And her goal was to, by Christmas, it was like a 3-month goal. She wanted to walk without the walker into Christmas. And I said, let's do it.
I
She was
love that.
but she wanted it. She wanted it, and she came, and we started slowly. And I'm talking like 5 pounds of weights. I'm talking like, and maybe only 2 reps. I mean, we started at baseline level. And every time she came, you could see the spark in her. You could see the energy and the level. And we finally got to, I got her on a treadmill. And I mean, when I'm saying it's moving like at a 1, like at a 0.1, I'm standing behind her and she's walking. And we do this day after day after day. But I'm telling you, she got stronger. And within 3 months, she was on that treadmill and without a walker, and she would come in and leave without a walker, and she changed her life. But it didn't happen the first day, but she was willing and she was determined. And that's where I say you start and then it becomes powerful. And then you could just see it. She's like, let's go a minute and a half, on the treadmill. I was like, let's do it. And it was just so encouraging. And that's how I do it in my life.
Yeah.
Lifting weights, I start out at X and I'm thinking, okay, tomorrow or next week, let's go up 2 pounds.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be this huge thing. And it becomes like you're invincible, this power thing and then
Yeah.
people around you are like, what's happening? I see it.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I encourage just little by little, whatever it is.
I love it. And did that woman walk into Christmas?
Yes. Oh yeah,
Did she dance into Christmas?
she ditched her her walking stick, whatever. Yeah,
I love that.
she did. It
I
was
love that.
phenomenal. And the thing about it is mind over matter. She didn't think she could, but she
Mm.
wanted it bad enough. And you can do anything you want to. You can do anything you set your mind to.
Yeah.
Anything.
And
It's power.
hear this, because this is a tangential passion project of mine. That woman, I think you said, was 80 or at least in her 80s.
She was in her 80s. Absolutely.
And her body was resilient enough to take to that exercise and grow.
Absolutely.
It makes me sad sometimes when I see people who are in their 60s, 70s who are kind of like, well, I can't really improve now because guess how old I am. And I'm just like, that is such a false narrative. Just like it's a false narrative to say if you cut calories and exercise, you're going to lose weight. It's such a false narrative. And I love to hear the stories of our elders and our beauties who are in their 80s and they're like, my body can still do it. Let's do it.
Totally agree. Totally.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that. And so one of the thoughts, like I think as we've been talking, and Justin, offer your thoughts here too, and I'll put you on the spot and you'll enjoy this, and I'm okay with that. This concept is sometimes you wake up on the wrong side of the bed. And sometimes it doesn't feel good, right? Sometimes it just feels like the day's already done and there's not going to be success within it, right? And I wholeheartedly believe that there's that capacity to shift mentalities. This said, I want to talk a little bit about not only resilience, but respect for kind of where your body's sitting in the present moment. So let me offer an example. I am a female with a menstruation cycle. I want to shout out there to all the females that have one too, that this impacts the day to day, right? When you wake up on day 1 of your cycle compared to day 20 of your cycle, there's a bit of a different hormone profile. And that needs to be taken into account when you're considering where you're sitting. So for example, usually the first 14 days, all the motivation in the world. And then the last 14 days, it takes a little bit more to get me there. Now, that doesn't mean that the last 14 days I give up and don't do it. It's just I have to change my approach a little bit. There's this element of knowing my body and also being mindful of let's be reasonable about what we can accept today, because it would be very faulty for me, in that second half of the cycle to be like, I'm going to throw everything up. I don't feel good. Instead of saying, cool, my body's not at a point where I can give what I gave the past 2 weeks, but I can give 75%. And I better do that 75%. Justin, thoughts there? Because I think sometimes one of the pitfalls when we get to goals, and a menstrual cycle is a very easy example for 50-ish% of the population, right? It's the idea of being realistic and ensuring that the reality does not stop your questing towards a goal. You just adjust with what is realistic. Thoughts, guys?
Yeah, so that's where, of course, we have a master plan in the first place, right? We can take that into account and anticipate that. So we can adjust, like if we're talking about a training program, yeah, we can make that one of the lighter times, and we can dial it all the way down to mobility and do some breath work if we want, right? It's just that we're going to put that time into our body. It doesn't always have to be bombastic style of training. But what I would suggest is kind of piggybacking off what you said, Felicia, with regard to that principle of power. You said the word power, and that's a powerful word, right? It's a great word. There's two mental attitudes someone could take. The first one makes you like a football, right? So you react strongly when force is applied to you, but you originate nothing, right? People of this type, they're victims of circumstance. They're not really able to create anything. They operate on a lower frequency in general. Are you a football, or are you this second type, which makes you more like a flowing spring, right? Like a river. Energy comes out of the center of you. You're a generator. You're a creator, right? That's someone who actually operates on a higher plane. So do you have life within yourself? That's what it kind of boils down to. Are you reacting to circumstances It's my time of the, sorry, but I'm on my menstrual cycle and this is creating X circumstance. Or am I a powerful person who's having to deal with this temporary circumstance, but I'm still this powerful person? I try to make sure that people avoid certain types of ways of talking to themselves, right? Like I said at the beginning, people can talk themselves into or out of success moment by moment, right? So the only thing I would say is definitely don't talk yourself out of a successful day. We need to stack days of success on top of one another. They may look a little bit different day by day, but the variables are going to be there and you can't stop life from hitting you, right? So learn to roll with them punches, right? Learn to slip, learn to move. And you may just have to create the best case scenario today. And then tomorrow, create the best case scenario tomorrow, regardless of what it looks like.
Yeah, because I think I see what I see often, and the menstrual cycle is just an easy example, but people forget, they'll assume that the day they woke up, the beginning of the goal, we all know how much motivation you can come in, how you feel into that power. And then 10 days later, right, January 21st, you kind of lost that. And so to me, there's this element of, well, let's plan for it. If you know that, 1 week a month you're traveling, for example, plan for that. How do you achieve your goal? How do you maintain your behaviors during that 1 week, right? And also the grace, we talked about this a lot last time, the grace to kind of get back on, because to expect that at some point in time you're going to fall off, right? Felicia, any thoughts from you on especially maintaining when life presents obstacles, either that we know of, like traveling or a cycle, or other, because life is delightful like that, tosses things at us that we're not aware of.
Yeah, life is tough. I tell my clients that don't beat yourself up. You still have tomorrow. If you can't literally get in and get something in for that day, don't beat yourself up. There is again tomorrow, but tomorrow now we need to keep going. We need to pursue. I also encourage people to get like a workout buddy, an accountability partner, somebody who I even myself have had partners that workout partners that I say, hey, man, I just don't feel like it today. And my workout partner be like, nope, get in the car. We're going. We're going. Yeah. And usually after I'm there and I'm in 10 minutes into it, I'm like, okay, I'm back. It just took somebody to just say, no, let's go do it. You got this. It's going to, you got it. Let's go do it. So I encourage you, if you can find a partner or somebody who you can call upon to say, hey, if I'm having a bad day and I can't get there,
yeah.
Remember your why. Remember, why am I going to go? Why am I going to do this? But we're all normal. We're all human. It happens with me. You just pick yourself back up and you go the next day.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I like listening to this panel, kind of the ideas that it has to be several points of accountability, right? So thinking of the bigger why, right? Thinking of your super Justin, your super Felicia in the sky, the person that you aspire to be. The why is one way. For someone, it might be quite literally an Excel tracker that tracks how many meters per day. For others, and I'd really encourage this too, community, right? We have the Facebook community. Or maybe this means reaching out to a good friend and saying, hey, friend, my goal is, and I'll say this, hey, friends on the internet, hey, friends, everyone that's at this webinar, my goal is to work out 3 times a week, and hold me accountable to that, right? Just like maybe I will hold you accountable to another goal, right? Check in with the person, hey, like I did my workout today, or hey, I'm really struggling to do my workout today. Remind me that this is important. Community is so important. That's why we have our Facebook group. That's why you're going to see consistent faces from us, right? Because we are not creatures that evolved in isolation. We are creatures that evolved in community. And so, thinking of the bigger super Justin in the sky, the super Felicia in the sky, thinking of the why, you want to play with your grandkids when you're 90, thinking of your Excel if you're a computer science nerd, or the community over Facebook, or your friend Felicia, your training partner, right? Yeah, I think setting yourself up for success with these behaviors and habits, once you've picked them, once you know in particular there are going to be barriers, right? That's all part of how do you get around that? How do you maintain? How do you actually stick to it, as opposed to bowing to January 21?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I see. I know that usually typically how we run these sessions is the three of us are going to chat for a little bit and, spout a little bit, and then we want to really encourage some feedback. So I know the comments and questions are open. I also see someone with their hand up. I wonder if we kind of start opening up the floor, because I think a lot of today what we're hoping for is really supporting you guys not only in the understanding of how to implement, how to select the behaviors and habits that are going to support your goals, be it fitness, be it weight loss, being it figuring out how to generate more energy within your day, right? So we want to make sure that if you guys have a specific problem, if you have a specific question, you can bring it forward to us here. So I apologize, I'm going to butcher this name. Marty, I believe. I think you have your hand up. And so I believe the voice of God can enable you to speak if you so wish. I'll just allow the voice of God to help with that.
Yeah, Marty, you should be able to speak if you unmute yourself if you want to ask your question in person.
Marty, we can't hear you. Just as a heads up, you're still on mute.
Maybe if we move on to, there might be a question. Oh, and there's a question in the Q&A, and maybe we can work on getting Marty's
Sure.
audio fixed while we wait.
Yeah, all right. So Andrew has tossed a question in, and I'll read it out and then I'll offer an answer. So Andrew's asking, I'm interested in trying intravenous vitamins. Do any of my gene results impact what form of IV vitamin I should or should not take? I'll offer answer to that. The answer is yes. So from a gene perspective, I think of it in two different ways. So in one way, there are a few genes that will very specifically curate what type of vitamin. So for example, most people are familiar with B12. It's something we often get through our animal friends when you're eating meat. It can also be put into a supplement or IV. There's many different forms of B12, right? B12 rarely exists alone. It's usually partnered up with someone. So it could be a partner of a methyl, so making methyl B12. It could be something with an adenosyl group, so an adenosyl B12. Your genes will actually dictate or influence which of those forms, which of the partnering and that coupling are best for you. There's a few other vitamins that are influenced there, as well as we know, like there's a few, for example, minerals like zinc or vitamin A as well that, maybe you don't absorb as well. And so that will be influenced by your genes. So the report will influence that. Separate to that as well, something that's really popular to be tossing into IVs is going to be something called glutathione. Glutathione, kind of think of it like the best defense and best cleaner within the body. It's the super strong thing that whenever there's damage, or maybe when there's oxidants and other things that are doing damage within the body, it kind of goes in and says, nope, it grabs them and takes them away and cleans them up out of your body. So a lot of people will do this sort of IV supplementation to either improve skin, to improve detox, to support maybe with a health protocol. There's many different reasons. I encourage you to talk to your doctor, obviously, because it would be a doctor facilitating this. And so some people actually don't receive glutathione very well through intravenous. It's almost too big of a dose. And so your genes may influence that. That one's a bit more of a complicated read in the sense of you'd want a practitioner to sit down with you and help interpret that, but your genes will influence your capacity to take an IV glutathione as well. Yeah, Justin, did I miss anything? Because I adore you in the sense that you remind me I miss things sometimes.
No, you smashed that. I was gonna, if you didn't bring up the glutathione, I was going to, but no, you got it. You got it.
See. All right. Hopefully, Andrew, that supported you there. Be your voice of God. I'll just allow you to poke me. Should be able to fix out the Marty audio situation. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep going through this list. All right. The next question here. Ooh, and I'm definitely going to be testing this to Justin because I know this is a beauty of yours. Any tips on grounding outside in the winter when the ground is wet and yucky? So Justin, maybe start off by telling the folks here what grounding is, and then any ProStar tips you have in the winter, because I would imagine where you are right now, there's a lot of snow. I'm in Toronto and we just finally got a beautiful bucket load.
Yeah, we got some snow here. It is on its way out. Grounding is basically to do with the body's electrical capacity. right? Like the human body is very electrical. That's why we need electrolytes, right? It's part of how our body communicates, our neurons and our hormones and things. So not grounding is a problem because we need to return our electricity to the earth. That's part of how that works. And if we don't, we become very inflamed, right? So it's an inflammation problem. It's like the electrical wires in your house. If they don't have a ground wire, it causes a fire. A fire in flames, inflamed. We are inflamed if we don't ground, right? We need to return to the earth. So in the wintertime, the best way you can do that is to still go outside and go for a hike, because you're actually still surrounding yourself with negative ions. You're still surrounding yourself with scalar waves. You could go out and just be a weird person and touch the tree with your hands. You know what I mean? So I will rely on that. Interestingly, my garage, or not my garage, but there's an area that's protected outside that happens to not have a floor. And I might actually just go walk on the soil out there as well. So you could do that. But just going for a walk in nature will at least saturate your body with some level of negative ions and give you kind of a similar impact. Beyond that, you could use things like PEMF, right? Things that still kind of mimic the Earth's natural frequencies in different ways. I'm not necessarily a fan of grounding mats across the board, like the ones that you just plug into the wall, just because they do work. But the problem is that if you have a lot of Wi-Fi routers and different things in your body, and then you, a conductive individual, step on a grounding mat, you can in fact become the conduit to help all the electricity in your house return to the earth. So that's not something that we want. So honestly, I would say it's as simple as just going for a walk in nature. Technically, water is conductive. Snow is made out of water. If you don't mind having freezing cold feet, you could probably still get some negative ion exposure by walking on the snow. Up to you if you want to do that one. I would say lace up, put some boots on, and go for a hike in the park. You're still going to get those natural frequencies. And remember, even if you have your cell phone in your pocket, if you're bombarded with natural frequencies, that little bit of Wi-Fi coming off your phone isn't going to be as bad as it is if you're in an apartment building and you have a phone in your pocket. So maybe go on airplane mode, right? Just kind of disconnect from everything, go out in nature, and you'll still get some of those anti-inflammatory benefits.
Yeah, I love that. And I think I would encourage in particular the Canadians or the people who are navigating winter or colder weather or rainy weather, right? We forget that sometimes a winter can just be a rainy season. Really encouraging to Justin's point, if you can't literally get your feet on the ground, going outside. I think, you know, a lot of this research around nature cure was popularized, at least in the current popularization was done by the Japanese, right? They look at something called forest bathing. And scientists ask this question of, hey, if you don't have access to a forest, right? Because a lot of us live in cities, but you still need that grounding and that benefit from it. They quite literally looked, I believe, I forget what city this was done in. I want to say New York, but I could be lying. You know, New York has these parkettes, right? There's a little park bench and a single tree. And they ask the question, if you go sit beside this single tree and chill out for 5 minutes, does it give you the same benefit as hanging out in the forest? And it's not equivalent, but you still get significant benefit from sitting beside that tree, taking that break, sitting with that, right? Such that it lowers blood pressure and really helps support a lot of other health goals, right? So we've heard today a few times, I want to improve my energy. As silly as this sounds, sitting beside a tree for 5-15 minutes as a break will improve your energy. It lowers inflammation, it lowers blood pressure, it lowers blood sugar. It's not a cure-all. You have diabetes, sitting beside a tree is not going to fix everything, but it is part of some of those small habits that you can start embedding, and pleasurable habits that can be something that adds to energy. And I think we'll continue to explore, now that we know that you guys are interested in how do you create more energy, we'll continue to explore that as we go through things. All right. I love that answer though, Justin. Thank you. I'm going to move on to the next question here. Please address more about the molecular and genetic nature of aiding weight loss, etc. Okay, and this question's from Barry. So Barry, I'm going to give you a little bit of a half-to-bake answer here. And Justin, please feel free, because I think part of the intention of this is really ensuring that once people have genetic results, we dig more into the genes that will influence, guide, and better support weight loss. Okay, so I don't want to dig into the specifics now because we do have that planned for subsequent sessions, and it's important, right? This is a genetic company. We stand here with reverence and awareness that genes help. This said, I want to just quickly talk through different ways that genes can influence weight loss. So for example, in reports, we have a section that is dedicated to diet and nutrition. There's a few genes in there that once you know your genotype will influence sort of the macros that you take in. Are you someone that if you have a large amount of carbohydrate, that will lend to weight loss? Are you someone if you have a large amount of fat in your diet, that will lend to, weight gain? I meant weight gain for both of these, right? So it can look at the food groups. We'll also separately look at how do you feel satisfied? Are you someone who's naturally a snacker? And if that's true, how do we strategize for that? Are you someone that naturally never really feels full? How do we strategize for that? Separate to that, we also look at mood and behavior, right? Let's not pretend that emotions and food aren't best friends. And so those that have profiles that are innately a little bit more emotional and reactive, in parallel, tend to have worse relationships with food. So knowing that enables some shifts, right? We also, and this one's super important, shout out to people with hormones, right? Hormones greatly influence this. Knowing how your body creates and processes sex steroid hormones will really influence strategies of exercise and strategies of weight loss. Okay, so while we haven't specifically gone into these, Barry, we will. We just want to make sure offer people the opportunity to get their reports so they can see their genes as we walk through this. Okay, I hope that answered the question. Justin, did I miss any significant topics? Diet, nutrition, mood behavior, hormones, inflammation, I guess indirectly, but any big genes that we should think about that I neglected to think of?
The only other one that would come to mind would be gut detox. I think microbiome status matters, right? I mean, we can talk about what to eat. Of course, that's what's obvious there, but it's also remembering that the gut microbiome is the processing plant that's actually going to do the nutrient partitioning, right? That's going to extract those amino acids so you can use them to build muscle. That's going to get those lipids and put them into the mitochondria so that you can actually burn fat. The microbiome has a huge part in all that. And if it's dysregulated, let's say you have 0 copies of GSTM1 and your gut isn't detoxing properly, you can see how the downstream effect of that could be more trouble with weight loss. So, you know, we break the reports into 6 different sections. Honestly, there's going to be a downstream effect to almost every one that could lend itself to the weight loss equation. That's why it's so complicated. Food is information. Right? Like that's why the calories in, calories out thing doesn't really work. I mean, on a baseline superficial level, yes, we take in energy. Yes, we expend energy. But between A and Z there's a massive amount of chemical equations going on to process that food and get it to go where it's supposed to go. So food is information. It's doing many, many things. And we have to know how your genes direct your cells to know what to tell you to eat and why to eat and how to eat. Right. So this is a whole thing. If you were my client, we would be having multiple conversations to get into all these little details because your hormones do matter for weight loss. You know, your microbiome does matter. Your methylation does matter. Your mood and behavior does matter. Right. Almost everything matters. So yeah, it's a little bit more nuanced, but just bouncing off that, gut health matters a ton there.
I would offer too, I think, thank you for priming me there, and possibly we add this on as an additional session. I know this isn't currently embedded within our schedule of sessions, but maybe we leave this as a, you know, a bonus session at the end of it. We do in various companies offer we offer something called the Gut 360, which will look at your biome. And in particular, it will look up various proportions of what the bacteria, what families the bacteria in your gut belong to. And there's one family, I'm going to butcher the enunciation of this, it's called the Firmicutes, something like that, Firmicutes family. And if you have a high volume of this, relatively speaking, it actually means it's really highly associated with weight gain, adiposity, obesity. So having that belly that we don't ideally want, right? And part of the reason of that is that group of bacteria quite literally digest your fat better, which means your body has better access to this high fat energy to these calories. And so people with a high proportion of this bacteria population are more inclined to be gaining weight, more inclined to extract from the food. And so maybe, you know, as a bonus value add, we do a session where we talk a lot more in depth around gut health, because I think, you know, as we talk about the complexities of weight loss, fitness goals, etc., it's erroneous of us to just assume it's genes, right? To Justin's point, it looks at other parameters like gut health. So maybe that's something we add on to the end. Yeah. Hopefully, Mary, that answered your question. I'm going to jump into the next one here. So Mary has asked, she's taking Corella to detox, and when she did, her hands and feet turned orange. Well, yeah. In part because she does not convert D2 to D3, so her keratin was really high. She was asking if it was harmful to her body, and that her GP recommended Corella since her detox system has several SNPs that need support. So I guess I'm a little bit curious as to the volume that you took. And I would also offer, ideally, you don't want to be indulging in a substance that is so high that, you know, you're seeing evidence of it not being properly processed, right? I think there's many, many different ways towards achieving detox, right? Not just simply one system, right? So I would say, you know, as we navigate through things, it is going to be examining the foods you take in, right? The exercise, one of the, you detox in 3 ways, right? Sweat, poop, pee. So really looking at, especially with exercise, how are you moving things around? How are you sweating and getting that stuff out? Felicia's going to be a phenomenal support there. So cleaning up the diet, cleaning up stress, and then I would look at additional kind of supplements. And it sounds like Corella for your body isn't a good fit. And so, you know, there always can be examination with your healthcare provider as to other thoughts and options. But my first stop, and I think in particular for this community, would really be looking at the exercise, the diet, and the stress, and then looking at supplements as that added on benefit. And likely for you, not Corella. There's other options there. Yeah. Any other Justin thoughts there?
Yeah, I would also identify what areas your body is detoxing well genetically, and then which ones it's not, right? So like look at the glutathione genes. Well, that'll be able to show, is it liver related? Is it gut, you know, related? Is it respiratory tract related? And when we just say the word detox, my body doesn't detox well, we need to know what areas need to be upregulated. You know what I mean? So like look at your antioxidation pathway. Is it mitochondrial? That will give us more detail as far as where we need to place those interventions, because chlorella, is one of many, many substrates we could use, to Dr. K's point. If it's at the level of the gut, chlorella is a good idea, but I've never even heard of someone's hands turning orange because of it. So that was certainly a sign that your body's not processing that well. Maybe we use something else. Maybe we use fulvic acid. Maybe we use charcoal, structured silver. There's a million ways to detox the body that don't have that down effect. I would also say that if you don't convert beta carotene to retinol, we need to be aware that there needs to be a retinol source added in there as well. So a beef liver or something like that would be in your interest to make sure that you're not deficient there as well. Yeah.
Smart answer as always, sir.
Thank
All
you.
right. I hope I'm saying this correct, but Jihan, asking any tips for people with MTHFR. So I'll offer, so MTHFR, for everyone's awareness, is one gene that will influence a process called methylation. Okay, so I'm going to offer a little bit of chatting on what methylation is, and then I'll speak to MTHFR, because this is a little bit of a passion project of mine. I clearly have far too many passions. So methylation, I like to think of it, it's a biochemical process. I'm not going to take you back to biochem as much as I would love to, because I'm a 4 eyes, but effectively what methylation is it's a communication system in the body, right? Across many different ways, it will tell some things in the body to turn on, some things to turn off. It tells our hormones, hey, we're done with you, you can turn off. It tells neurotransmitters, we're done with you, you can be cleaned up. It's part of detox. It's part of, you know, expressing and reading DNA. It does a lot of different things. I think of it again as a communication system, right? And within the industry, especially the genetic industry, right? People have really grabbed onto this idea that there is one gene that determines how this very, very complex system works. And when I say complex, if I whipped out my Orgo textbook, you'd see several different diagrams of like far too many things pointing far too many places. It is a very complex chemical process, tossing things back and forth, right? So the analogy I like to use as to how this communication is achieved is a basketball team, okay? So when you think about a basketball team, if you go to watch a game, you're effectively watching two groups of people. They're passing the ball back and forth, hoping to shoot the ball somewhere, right? Now, in the middle of this basketball game, let's pretend you're in the stands and you're watching one person. Or for our example here, you're watching methylation and you're watching one gene. When you're watching this, you know what that gene or what that person is doing. Do they have the ball? Are they passing it? Are they shooting it? Are they doing other sportsy stuff? Right? But you actually don't know what's going on in the game. You don't know what the other team is doing. You don't know what that team, the player is on, that gene is on, what they're doing. You just have insight to that one person. So you don't know what's actually going on in the game, right? And unfortunately, within the industry, we've decided that MTHFR is this sexy gene, this player, you know, maybe our LeBron James of the world, and we're exclusively going to watch that gene. We forget that LeBron James belongs to a larger team. So I would offer an answer to this MTHFR question, which is really important. Methylation is really important. I've just listed hormones, detox, how the body regenerates DNA, does a lot of important things. But if we only focus on one gene, we're actually not getting the full story. We're just watching one player in a game, okay? And so I would actually challenge, and this is the beauty of when you read more than just one gene, when you look at the whole team, right? When you analyze the whole team, you actually better know how to not only watch this gene, watch this player, but how to appreciate the whole game, how to support the entire game. There's approximately, we look at about seven genes or 7 SNPs that influence this. So I would challenge you to actually take a step beyond and look beyond just MTHFR, which is the sexy gene in the scene right now, and looking at the full panel. And you'll see that in the DNA 360. And I think when we go through detox, when we get everyone's results, we can kind of walk people through the things to be mindful of when you're reading that report. I hope that was a good answer. C'est bon? Okay. Okay, Justin, this is a question for you. Marianne is asking, it's back to grounding, love it. She's asking, can you do grounding on pavers outdoors, which I imagine means like concrete or paved ground, as opposed to dirt in the dirt?
Yeah. You can, right? Because to some, it's rocks. Let's just call it rocks, right? To some level, rocks are going to be conductive, right? There's some minerals in there. It's right underneath of that is the ground. I would say that you're going to get some of the effect. I think it's going to be slightly blunted though. You know what I mean? Because there's kind of a layer between you and the earth, and we want to get as close to just touching it as we can, the actual soil. The earth is electrically charged with those negative ions. And funny enough, it's because every time that lightning strikes the earth, it charges it, right? That's part of it. Lightning is electricity from the sky. It is in fact grounding, and it actually charges the area with electricity. So rocks are going to have a bit of a blunting effect on that, I would say. I haven't exactly done studies or anything, but I think that you're going to get some, but it's not ideal, right? Like you're better off having some foliage around, you know, to Dr. K's point, sitting on the park bench with a tree next to you. You're close to the negative ions, right? But I think that a direct grounding effect would be a little bit blunted, unless you have a different opinion there, Dr. K.
Good. I have not dove into original research. I think my stance on this, and this is really to the end of not sacrificing the good for the perfect. I think if all you have access to is pavement, so long as you're outside, so long as especially you're enjoying that moment of being outside and sticking your feet on the ground and making that mindful connection, I would offer that's going to be far superior to not doing it because you don't have access to dirt. Right. So that would be where my opinion stands. And again, I think about this 1%, right? I really think about this idea of, you know, when you wake up on the wrong side of the bed, or maybe you're at a certain point in your travel schedule or your menstrual cycle or whatever it is, you know, don't let a paved ground stand in the way. Accept what is before you and do your best with it. That would be my thought. But that being said, I'm kind of interested by the answer, and I'll see if I can do some research because the physics behind that will be fun.
Agreed.
Yeah. All right. There's another question again from Jihan. I hope I'm saying that your name right. And I'm going to pass this very specifically to Justin because I've heard Justin speak on this before, and I think you're very elegant and eloquent talking on this. Who cannot use turmeric according to genes? Okay. And I guess maybe Justin also offer kind of some of the benefits as well to turmeric and why some people might be using turmeric or the more nutraceutical way of curcumin. So some people might have heard of this as curcumin.
Right. And I would say that there's a pretty well documented benefit to it at some point. And you may have actually heard people say something along the lines of turmeric causes DNA damage. I've heard people say that. People in the carnivore community who I have tremendous respect for, but it's a little bit off, right? So turmeric does not damage DNA, quote unquote. What it can do is it can downregulate a particular gene within your CYP family, right? So we've got this, it's called the gene family, the CYP family, cytochrome P450. There's going to be a bunch of them in your hormone panel. They're going to exist in the detox panel. One in particular that we actually refer to as the caffeine gene, because it plays a role in the metabolism of caffeine, is called CYP1A2. So CYP1A2, we talk about it in terms of caffeine and stimulants, but what it really is a phase 1 detox gene, right? So detox happens in more than one phase. There's a first phase, and then there's a second phase, and in between first and second, there's actually an intermediate chemical that gets created, which is, funny enough, very toxic, right? So we want a nice flow between phase 1 and phase 2. CYP1A2 is phase 1 detox. Turmeric happens to downregulate CYP1A2 activity a bit. So we need to know a little bit about, is it a fast enzyme or a slow enzyme to begin with? That'll be in your report somewhere. I can't recall exactly where that one is. But if it's very fast, turmeric might slow it down a bit. That could be good or bad. Things that upregulate it would actually be cruciferous vegetables, right? So you can actually use different nutritive substrates to either up or down regulate phase 1 detoxification. What we want to be aware of is if it's already slow, right? If you have a CYP1A2 and it's slow, then we down a bunch of turmeric because we want the anti-inflammatory benefits. We're actually creating a different issue at the same time, right? We don't want to take a step forward and then another one back and end up exactly where we are or worse. So have a look at that gene in particular, and you'll know whether or not it's right for you. Other than that, let's say you have there's a gene called 9p21 that we look at for endothelial density. And if you're at risk for having a lot of inflammation and it causing damage, we do need to look at anti-inflammatory nutrients. That would be a great one, right? Curcumin is great for that. We just don't want to add benefit here and subtract benefit over there. So that's kind of the moving parts to it. Have a look at that gene and that'll tell you the answer. Oh, you're on mute there, Dr. K.
I love it. I try to give you space and then I cut myself off. Here we go. The thought, I guess, so Justin mentioned it's in the report. Currently, CYP1A2 is actually captured in the hormone or the sex steroid hormone report. It will be moved. We're updating our reports in the coming year, and it will be moved into the detox section as well. So you'll see it in 2 points. But for those people that have ordered the test, if you pop into your hormone report, you will see it reported there. And secondly, I really want to be emphatic about this because I love, ensuring, yes, we do the fancy, sexy science, but we also think to the practical. Justin mentioned phase 1 and phase 2 detox, right? A lot of the work that our liver friend is doing. Phase 3, the most important part, the part that most people forget about, poop, pee, sweat. So, if you're going to be doing all this fancy footwork with turmeric or other anti-inflammatories and you're really supporting liver, make sure you're doing the other things. These things need a route to escape. Okay, that's where exercise and sweating comes in and moving all your lymphatic fluid, right? This is where kind of ensuring a diet full of fiber becomes really important, which is also good for the biome, right? And this is where drinking a lot of water, right? We want to do the fancy footwork with the fun, sexy science. We also want to be practical and ensure it actually lands, right? 80% of health, the fanciest scientists that you go to, 80% of health is going to come down to sleeping, eating well, and staying less stressed. The other 20% is this fancy footwork, which is important, Very, very important, but you still got to be doing the basics, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm going to jump into another question here. And I'll toss it to either Felicia or Justin. Felicia, I'd be curious if you have some practices here. The question is, what is your favorite breath practice before bed? And then they've listed a few forms, so resonance, box breathing, etc. And then their goal, this person's goal, is ultimately to increase their HRV. So HRV stands for sorry, heart rate variability. And what that is you think about your heart is beating, right? We are not a metronome. That heart rate is not beating quite literally with the same time in between every beat. And so this is a measurement to say, how consistent are your heartbeats? You know, is it kind of the similar to a metronome of dot, 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 very even? Or is there a great variance where it's dot, 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 dot? That's what we're looking at. And this can be a parameter of health insofar as what is the coherence, what is the gentleness with which your heart is beating. So breath work. I love this idea because again, it's this accessible, it has far-reaching parameters, but absolutely everyone on this call, FYI, is breathing. So how do we leverage the breath? How do we leverage something that everyone is doing to adding to health? Felicia, Justin, I'll either one happily.
For me, it would be to get right before you go to bed to knock out all the noise, and then to meditate or pray, whatever your choice is. Sometimes I stretch. Sometimes I literally would get on the ground and lay down and stretch and breathe. And if you have I have an Apple Watch and I can check my heart rate. And sometimes I can know when if it's beating fast, but if I just breathe and relax, deep breaths in, out, that helps for me. But also I don't eat anything full of caffeine like 2 hours before I go to bed. I don't even eat generally 2 hours before I go to bed. So I try to really just ease into the night, but it's a mind thing. It's also just relaxing, letting it all go. And that's how I do it. What about you, Justin?
So with breath, what I always try to bear in mind is what kind of breath is going to activate the sympathetic nervous system, what kind of breath is going to be parasympathetic, right? I'm not going to do breath of fire right before bed and assume that I'm going to get a good night's sleep because I'm going to be charged, right? So some of it's more appropriate earlier in the day. We need to be aware that cortisol operates on a circadian rhythm. It's one of the main master regulators of that whole system, right? So by 10 p.m. is when cortisol is supposed to be at its lowest, which is when a lot of people go to bed. So as cortisol lowers, our three most anabolic hormones raise, being melatonin, growth hormone, testosterone. And that's a great time to do a parasympathetic style of breathing. You mentioned box breath. I think that's great. 4-4-4-4. That's pretty effective for bringing the heart rate down, right, and kind of calming the nervous system. I'm also a big fan of something called the 1 minute breath, which is 20, 20, 20. So it's 20 seconds in. This is fun to try because it's actually requires a little bit more discipline than you might think. And then a 20-second hold and 20 seconds out. So you're only taking one full breath in an entire minute. And that really calms the nervous system down because what is hyperventilating? What is, when we have some kind of traumatic event and we freak out and we breathe a lot, that surface breath and that rapid breath really turns on the adrenal cortex and different things. So slow breathing, I would also say that doing it in the nose, of course, we don't want to breathe into the mouth because that's going to activate that panic system as well. I'm also a fan of 4-7-8. I think that's a great one as well. Just 4 in, hold for 7, out for 8. I'll do that for 10 minutes straight if I'm really not in control of my psychological narrative. Any improper type of breath before bed can actually activate cortisol. We don't want that. That's when it's supposed to be low. So 1 minute breath, 4-7-8. Your box breath is great. Do it in through the nose, out through the mouth. Dr. K, you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, well, I would offer, I like your idea of dividing down the nervous system and everything that Felicia said, kind of that true pausing and enjoying breath and doing breath in a way that is comfortable very much sits with the parasympathetic system. And I would really offer, I think there's a lot of research that talks about how we breathe too much. Too much meaning we take really shallow breaths, and it typically, you're really only, if you think about your lungs, which kind of sit here, you're really only breathing into this part of the lung. Because when you think about it, you have to expand diaphragm down to actually get into the lower part of the lung. And so I would offer for some people, you know, if you're not a counter, again, there's people who love Excels and people who don't. If you're an Excel person, jump onto some of those tactics that Justin just detailed, right? There's like the yoga tradition in particular has done a lot of, they have a lot of technology investigation around breath. They have a lot of breaths that calm. But if you're not an Excel person, right, I think really encouraging very deep, mindful breaths can be a way you do that. In particular, think of your diaphragm has to go down to expand for the lungs. When this happens, something really, really, really cool happens. It's a very physiologic anatomic thing. As your diaphragm expands down so you can increase the size of your lungs, so you can get air deeper down in, it's quite literally massaging your vagus nerve. And your vagus nerve is one of the most important nerves when we think of turning on the parasympathetic nervous system, calming down and resting. You know, there's this phrase that I'm sure you've heard a grandma or an auntie or a grandpa say, like, hey, pause, take a breath. Part of the wisdom of that phrase is quite literally massage the nerve that calms you down. Pause. Justin made the comment, right? When my mind is spinning, I will do these breath practices, right? When you engage in breath, you stop this a little bit. You stop kind of the freak out response, the cortisol kind of terror responses, and you come down into this happy space. So I would offer, if you're an Excel person, jump onto the counting. If you're not, jump onto the being mindful and really enjoying that. There's many different ways I think you can approach it, right? It's kind of like saying exercise, right? If I was to say, hey, go exercise, and I said, like, try out soccer, maybe that's an exercise, and you go play soccer and you don't like it, right? That doesn't mean you don't like exercise. It means you don't like soccer. There's other ways you can go about it. So don't feel like if you try a breath technique, if you do the counting that Justin detailed or the enjoyment that Felicia detailed and it doesn't work for you, that doesn't mean breath work doesn't work. It means you didn't like that one and you can try and play around with others, right? There's many different sports. There's many different types of breathing. Okay. I thought. All right. I'm going to jump on to another question. And this might be actually a both question, we'll open the floor first to Felicia. If your goal is to build strength and bulk through weightlifting, is there one strategy for lifting that is more impactful than others? All right, Miss Bodybuilder.
Well, to build in bulk, you got to eat. You got to lift really, really heavy. It just takes time. It's not going to happen overnight. It can be done, but your whole diet would look so different than the normal person to bulk. It's going to be a lot more calories, but good clean calories. I mean, just don't get it twisted. And lifting super, super heavy to build bulk.
Justin, anything to add to that, or are you in agreement?
Yeah, I'm totally in agreement. I'll add to it a bit just for the fun of it. So, you know, yeah, to get that real density, I've always found that lifting heavy, and when I say heavy, I mean rep range wise, right? Being like the 1 to 5 reps where you're pretty much maxing out towards the end of that. That's going to give you a little bit more muscle density. As far as general hypertrophy or hypertrophy, people pronounce it different ways. I call it hypertrophy, the building of muscle. We need to understand that you need to find what kind of rep ranges to work within. And there's two different types of hypertrophy, right? There's myofibrillar hypertrophy, meaning you're ripping down the actual myofibrils and then rebuilding them with amino acids and what have you to build more muscle. So that's going to operate within like a 6 to 12 repetition range. Then there's also sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, which is like way higher reps and you're actually like expanding the fascia and you're pumping the hell out of the muscle, right? So you're doing like 20 reps and you're getting as much blood flow into that muscle as possible. The pump, quote unquote, which I have no doubt Felicia got one earlier today and probably does daily, right? Getting the pump.
Absolutely.
So what is a pump, right? It's the delivery of oxygen and nutrients into that muscle. The more blood you get into the muscle and the more often you do that, the more it's going to grow. That's what actually shapes it, right? Because the fascia is like pressing down on that muscle and constricting it. So we need to pump it up. So lifting heavy, 1 to 5 rep range, that's going to give you the most growth hormone pulse, the most testosterone pulse. Anabolic hormones matter. Then lifting in a 6 to 12 repetition range is going to just obliterate those myofibrils, and then we're going to rebuild them. You're going to build muscle that way. Then just pump it up. You might grab a pair of 5s and just smash out a bunch of lateral raises. Do 100 reps. I bet you do that every couple of days. You're going to build some big shoulders, right? So select the exercises that make sense and then select the rep ranges. But I recommend dabbling in it because there's different ways to build muscle, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. I got really distracted by your fancy science words because I enjoyed them and then forgot that I should be listening because I need to hear all this stuff to start lifting
Yes.
weights. All right. Richard had a follow-up question, and I value this because this is specific to the XXs and the females in the room, those in particular that are navigating menopause. So he said, for his wife, she has similar goals to build muscle, but struggles with menopause. What are some tips for that? I think I'm going to toss the mic to Felicia in just a second, but I would also offer when we get to some more of when we look at genes, in particular sex steroid genes and menopause and how that can all influence, I think we'll talk a little more specifically about that. But Felicia, what's your experience training women who have goals of building muscle and are navigating that change of life?
Well, through menopause, we as women have to have testosterone. I mean, and we do carry it just like men do. Obviously, not in the amounts that they do, but we do carry it. And I found out personally going through menopause. I've been through menopause. I'm postmenopausal. I actually got on bioidentical hormones, and they fixed me because I was regulated with estrogen, progesterone, and a testosterone.
Mm-hmm.
That's what helped me. It also helped me with the water weight gain, the little roundness around I mean, I'm normal. I had it and I couldn't get rid of it. And once I figured that out, that it was hormonal, which, it can't stand it, but I'm just going to deal with it. It's not going to get me down. That's what worked for me. And then once I got that, then lifting became better and easier. And the results came off. They showed up.
Yeah. And I wonder too, and I think this is something we can post in the Facebook group in the coming weeks. I don't know exactly when, but in the coming weeks, we are doing a webinar or a podcast, I forget which one, that is going to very pointedly and specifically speak to bioidentical hormones and things that you can consider. It won't per se go so deep as to say, let's tie together weight training and muscle gain with this, but it will help navigate this space, this very confusing space that Dr. Google has 5 million different opinions on. It will start to, yeah, that eye roll is so true.
So
Women are
true.
really, yeah, women are left to, Dr. Google tells them it's going to give them cancer and kill them. And then also Dr. Google says it's the best thing ever. So we're going to offer some information in particular specific to genes, but also just specific to various turns in life and how bioidenticals can be considered and supportive in conjunction with your providers. So we'll make a note to put that webinar, podcast, whatever it might be, in the group. So if this is something you're interested in, look into our Facebook group and you'll be able to link to that and hear that information. All right. C'est bon. Okay, now I see someone has their hand up. I've unintentionally been neglecting that. So I'm going to go to Marianne. I believe that you've just been given control. So if you want to take your mic off, or sorry, your mute off, hopefully, if the tech gods like us, you'll be able to offer your question for us.
Marianne, you should have the ability to unmute if you wanted to ask your question in person. If not, go ahead and drop it in the Q&A box for Dr. Kostroman, Justin, and Felicia to, yeah. Thank you.
Maybe not. Okay. Marianne, again, and we'll leave you up there just in case you want to pop in, but if you want to just type it in the chat box, we will get to it. I want to be mindful of everyone's time. We have about 5 minutes. I'm happy to go a bit over, but just want to keep mindful of people's time and honor that. Let's see here. So in the chat box, the next question I see, is there any information and motivation you can share for women who struggle with things like PCOS and endometriosis? in terms of continuing to stay motivated when there are such ups and downs and pain levels, body function, fatigue levels, where it's difficult to stay consistent and see results with weight loss. Yeah, thank you for bringing that forward, because I think it's sometimes like weight loss by itself is a very tricky thing, you know, shifting the way you eat, shifting the way you exercise, and then to kind of have something atop that either you believe or makes it, you know, biologically more difficult. I think we will be having some podcast webinars specific to these. So again, we'll be mindful to post those, right? But I would offer, in terms of really enabling weight loss specifically, which for both of those conditions, weight loss will be supportive in reduction of symptoms, but innate to those conditions, you know, kind of a bit more difficult. I would say first and foremost, finding a really good primary care provider who understands those conditions and can intelligently support you through them, I think is what first and foremost where that needs to start. Some of that, and I say this with just saddened heart, sometimes that takes a lot of advocacy from you, a lot of advocating for yourself with your doctors, right? Conditions that impact female, which include PCOS and endometriosis, are only now starting to be given some credence in the medical community. And so there's still an element of you need to go to your doctor and advocate and say, I need this support. Please provide me with it. And so that would be first and foremost. You know, I think it's an uphill battle if you're trying to do it without the support of your care provider, right? Genes can educate this, different medications can educate this, different testing. So get that. And then maybe I'll toss it to a Felicia, Justin, any thoughts on kind of how to navigate, again, this kind of idea that some days you're going to wake up and hormones are not going to be your ally. If anything, they're going to make it almost more difficult to get out of bed, right? In particular, for those who aren't familiar with endometriosis, when the female has their period, it can be a several week thing, or a week and longer, where you're in bed with debilitating cramps and bleeding, and that's not a period where you're going to be able to get up and go to the gym, right? So how do you navigate that when you know maybe a month, a week, you're not going to be able to get up and do things? Or with PCOS, it dysregulates your insulin, which makes weight gain more probable, right? Assuming you're getting doctor care, assuming that's kind of all things equal, what are your advice and thoughts on kind of maintaining that when you have to plan for possibly a week where you're not able to get up and do things?
Well, first of all, adversity introduces a person to themselves, right? So congratulations, you know yourself better than somebody who doesn't have these things that they're up against. You have a tremendous amount of resistance, right? We talk about resistance training because it's so analogous to life, isn't it? We lift weights because it's adversity that we impose on ourselves, and we create that 2.0 version on the other side of it. I also think that your trauma is the prerequisite to your life's purpose. I do. I think that you may be a beacon for somebody else going through this. The days that you can win anyways, you're actually going to end up being an inspiration to others. So maybe that is part of your purpose here, you know, to be someone who did it anyway, someone who navigated their mind anyway. I'm not suggesting going and crushing a massive squat workout on the days when this is happening to you, but find your wins in that and find your peace in those wins. You know, sometimes, like I mentioned at the beginning, I'll dial it all the way down to a mobility day, a breath work day, working on my mindset. I've had times when I just cooked my back doing something and I just couldn't get up and train at all because it would seize. This is a great time for me to work on some breath. This is a great time for me to work on my mindset, connect to the universe, say what I'm grateful for, right? So controlling your narrative now more than ever is going to matter, but we measure ourselves in those moments, right? Who are you when things are going wrong? It's easy to have gratitude and be grateful for your life when things are going great, but those test days were worth so much more. Test days are the best days, right? That's something that I like to say. You've got a tremendous amount of tests, and all the respect to you and continuing to make it and press forward. We have to always find a way to play offense, right? Life will force you into a defensive posture. We can't have that. At some point, we have to figure out a way to actually press forward and play offense against this. Like I said, there's always a best move on the chessboard. Sometimes you look at it and you're cooked, man. There's nothing you can do that is going to really accelerate you in this moment. But there is a best choice, right? So isolate that little best choice. Maybe it's just choosing a good narrative instead of a bad one. Maybe it's just calling a family member and saying, how are you? Right? Just taking it completely out of that. When I'm having a bad narrative day, sometimes I'll just do something for somebody else, and it tends to fix it in that moment. So find a little bit of gratitude and find whatever little inch you can gain. And that's the momentum game. That's what we're talking about. That's your best bet. There's always a best move. So make the best move.
That's
Totally
wonderful.
thoughts.
He nailed it. You nailed it, Justin. But I would, on the only thing I would other say is depending upon how bad your endometriosis is. I mean, is it like bedridden, debilitating, or you're okay, but it's just really a hard day? Maybe the days that are good, leading up to that time of the month, maybe really strive to put in, that, okay, I'm going to really try and do the extra work or the 10 minutes longer. Push yourself on those days so that knowing when the days do come that you're in the most pain, that maybe they, first of all, I don't think they'll be as bad, but even if they are that bad, that you can still maybe, like Justin said, get up and do something else. Just make it look different, a little bit differently. Breathe, maybe sit out and get grounded, do some things that for you that are still for you is what I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I just want to offer a space that sometimes, especially in a culture where we tend to measure and judge ourselves by what we do, by the idea of, oh, I must be out of bed and I must be productive and I must this and that. It is really, really difficult in moments where body is not well and body is saying, hey, take a day where you're resting, to be brave enough to actually take a rest day. We do not live in a culture that supports being sick because it's, what's wrong with you? Why are you sick? There's almost this shame that comes coupled with it, this idea that you should be up and being productive. And so I would offer one of the braver things is not per se accepting the pain and not going to the doctor and not having a fitness plan and not kind of engaging those things, but also on the days where it's really rough, don't beat yourself up even anymore and try and get out of bed and try and do these things that further hurt, right? We've all heard about the person who, maybe they hurt themselves, and if they stayed in bed one day and rested, they would be better the following day. But if they try to get out of bed and do whatever it is they need to do on that day, they've made it worse. And they're then going to have to be in bed for even longer, right? There's an element of when there's the obstacle, be mindful of what it is. Don't give into it, but be wise about it. If you can rest for a day and heal yourself so that you can continue the next few days, great, right? If it's something a little, I don't know how I did that. My computer does fancy things sometimes.
Cool.
Wow.
Oh, in honor of Valentine's Day, I do know how to make it do this though. So happy Valentine's Day, everybody.
Okay, that was cool. That was cool.
It happens magically sometimes. I don't mean it. But yeah, I would offer also like advocate for yourself with your doctor, because a lot of doctors are not advocating for females properly in these conditions, but also be gentle with yourself. Don't go pushing yourself to the point of injury. All right, seeing 3 more questions and we're gonna do it. If you have to jump off, that's cool. We'll definitely put the recording link in the Facebook webinar. Don't think that, or sorry, Facebook page. Don't think that you're going to be denied this. But given we are here in service to you, we'll make sure we'll close up these last 3 questions. So Michelle has asked, what is your thought about food combining as related to weight loss? I think, Michelle, there'll be a little bit of deferral because I think we'd like to get into this sort of question once we have some genetic information from people, because the answer to that is going to be very personalized. Every person here is going to have, to an extent, a different answer. That said, I don't know, Justin, Felicia, if you have like a quick soundbite around food combinations, I would imagine it would depend on your goal, right? If you're looking, to Felicia's point, to bulk, that is a different way of eating than if you're trying to lean up. So I think there's a lot of nuance to that, and perhaps, Michelle, we dig into it. Justin, Felicia, anything that you want to offer that's quick, or is that a question maybe we explore once in March or April once we have some results?
I would definitely do that, just because if I give you blanket advice, remember the DNA company, this is exactly what we're about, is that personalization. So if I say up your carbs or combine carbs with proteins, whatever it is, not knowing, that you might have the worst case scenario genetically, that would in fact be bad advice on my part. So I would say just utilize the gene AMY1, TCF7L2, APOA2. Look at those and understand kind of how your macronutrients should be laid out. There can be some more nuances to it where, you know, a coaching program may be appropriate. But without knowing your genes, I just don't want to give you bad advice, or not bad, that's not the right word, but less than optimal advice for your genes.
Unprecise, general advice. That's what we're
Yeah.
trying to avoid. We don't want to give people general advice. General advice of eat less, do more hasn't worked. We're being more specific around our advice.
Yeah.
Okay. The next question here is from Irina. Oh Lord, I butcher these names. I apologize. Has the coffee gene been added to the DNA 360, or is it still in the practitioner only basket? So this is the CYP1A2 or 1 Andrew 2. I'm now questioning myself. I believe it is in the sex steroid hormone report or the hormones and fitness report. If not, reach out to us, and it's something that we can support unearthing for you. Okay.
You know, it rings a bell now that I'm thinking about it. It might actually also be in the antioxidation in the gene cast, though.
Okay.
Yeah, because I remember now, I had to search for it one time because that's, I couldn't find it, but it was in the gene cast itself. So go to antioxidation and then click the gene cast and go down a few. It'll be the glutathione genes and a few things. CYP1A2, it'll be A's or C's. That's the gene that we're referencing. That's where it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for awareness, we're working on our reports, and we're planning on updating some of the things that we're offering. So in time, it won't be this month or next month, but in time, you're going to see some more genes and access to this coffee gene. All right. Last question here from Stacy. I completed a long COVID protocol, 3 months, at the end of January. Since then, I've been experiencing rashes on my body and scalp. Is this from my body detoxing or stopping all the supplements on the protocol? Stacy, that one's a very difficult question to answer because there's a lot of variables that you've just offered here, right? So long haul innately offers kind of not only exposure to COVID, but often re-aggravation of certain viral illnesses. You mentioned a protocol, and there's several different, there's some themes, but there's several different protocols currently being used for long haul COVID. And especially depending on what that was, that may or may not have injured certain gut bacteria. And there's many different variables here, right? And so I don't know if we could meaningfully, helpfully answer this question. I'd really encourage whoever offered this protocol, maybe reaching out to the practitioner that did. We also offer episodic care. So if you want to come to us, and possibly we can support that, right? But I would offer, just given the number of variables here, it's a difficult question to answer live, because I think it would require quite a complex medical history. And unfortunately, this isn't the forum. But again, reach out to us, and maybe we can connect you with a practitioner that can support understanding what happened. Or maybe it means going back to your practitioner. I'd offer, a practitioner offered you a protocol and you're now experiencing this rash. There's wisdom and intelligence in touching base with them to understand the why of that. Yeah, I believe this is the end of our questions. So I want to make sure, I'm gonna give space for both Justin and Felicia to say their goodbyes. But again, I would remind people, you know, the homework we offered last time, the homework I'm going to remind you again today of is know your why. You know, what we learned about today was sitting with habits, sitting with that 1%, sitting with that daily incremental, and learning how to navigate when that day doesn't work out so well, right? Half the battle of a habit is continuing it when it doesn't work out so well. So I'd really encourage, and please post this in the Facebook group. Think about these things, offer it to your community, right? So that they can be involved in your success, right? Because the why is important. The how is important. These habits are important. The community and the accountability and the discipline are also really important. So really think about these things, please, and bring them forward to the group. Enable us as your community to be supportive. My goal in theory, my goal definitely is to be exercising 3 times a week. I have something quantifiable, and it's gonna happen, even if it is with my happy little 5-pound weights. It's gonna happen, and I'll share my progress on that group as it goes about. Justin, Felicia, any thoughts for you guys before we close up for the night?
I just say that, sorry. I was just gonna say that, yeah, community is phenomenal. Lean on each other. That's what we're all here for. Facebook's a great place and a great space to speak to each other and lift each other up and in a well place. You know what I'm saying? And then again, I say ask yourself what is your why? I agree with Dr. Kostroman. What is your why? Why do you want it? What is the end look for you? How are you gonna be a better version of you? What does that look like?
I got a muscle. Justin?
Muscle is good. Yes.
That's good.
I would say, yeah, I mean, it's exactly what you think it is. We're all on the hero's journey, every one of us. It's up to us. You know, we're in control of our life. The analogy I made about the football and the river, make sure that you're that second one, right? Life is within you, and make sure that you're in control and you're not just reacting to everything. Be in the driver's seat, gain some momentum, stack some wins, and I'm looking forward to seeing everybody on the next call.
And go hug a tree.
Hug a tree.
Go hug a tree.
Get barefoot, hug a tree.
We do all this fancy genetic medicine and we leave you with the idea of go hug a tree.
Yeah.
Cool. I think we are good for this evening or afternoon, depending on your time zone. It is a beautiful evening for me. So we wish you a bientôt. We'll see you in approximately 2 weeks. Jump onto the Facebook group as you will be, as that will position when we're next together. It's approximately 2 weeks. All right, friends and family, we will see you all later. Have a lovely evening.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all
Thank you,
very much.
everyone,
Thank you
for
for
joining
attending.
us.
Good night, everybody.
Au revoir.